Good morning, FedPhoenix fam. So, today I want to make a really brief video about who should be in prison, right? Because, as Americans, we are culturally conditioned through TV, through media, through pretty much whatever, to have this mentality of if a person has committed a crime, right, then they should be in prison. And there's usually not much context or consideration given, to that. And it's kind of like, when you're a kid or even an adult and you see a movie and someone has clearly committed a crime. If they get incarcerated, no matter how minor the crime was or the nature or the circumstances, more often than not, the general public stands up and claps and says, hey. And then when we see things on the news about inmates, being abused or neglected or whatever, people are never outraged. People are never clutching their pearls. Instead, the natural response is, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Or, oh, you shouldn't have been getting in trouble. And this mentality is so counterproductive as a society and a culture. And I just want to touch on that real quick. And, so when you ask me, right, who should be in prison? My answer is not a person convicted of a crime. In fact, my moral compass is not based upon what is legal and what is illegal. At some points in this country, slavery was legal. At some points in this country, it was legal to it wasn't considered illegal, I should say, to beat the crap out of your wife. No one really batted an eye at that. That was fine. We have most American families, particularly those below the poverty level, can attest to generations of, in-house family friend, child abuse, generational, over and over and over. And, these things are not prosecuted as much as they should be and certainly aren't given the consideration they should. Heck, where I live, real predators, real sex offenders, don't even have to inform the neighbors when they move in because the state of West Virginia says it's public knowledge, they can look it up, so there's no need to warn them. So, so something being a crime or not being a crime, to me, does not validate morally if it is right or wrong. In fact, there are a lot of things historically in America that at some point were criminal that were morally correct. And there were many things in this country, and even currently, that were crimes that were morally sound. So, I don't think that any person with an average IQ or better is doing themselves any service or their community by simply writing off if a person has committed a crime, they should be incarcerated. And then we need to think about that too. What does that mean when a person is incarcerated, right? What does it mean? Does it mean they're on like a grown-up timeout? Like, oh, smack their hand, you did a bad thing, here's your punishment. Not really. And a lot of people equate it to that, but that's very inaccurate. Like I've mentioned before, some people don't make it out of prison because of the medical negligence. The level of depravity in American prisons is shocking. Some people don't make it out of prison because they unalive themselves, because there is little to no psychological care, and the scraps of it, the remnants of care that exist psychologically, are often counterproductive. For example, if you say, "Hey, I'm going through too much. I'm thinking about taking my life." The response is not one of therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy or anything of that nature, but rather it's either to medicate you and usually rather than to put you in a pickle suit, put you on Turtle Island, put you in a smock, a heavy smock. They feel like those lead X-ray vests, and isolate you, which of course exasperates the psychological damage. So when you ask me who should be in prison, what I hear is who should be abused, neglected, and forced into a psychological war zone of depravity for a period of time. Who deserves that? And for me, if you are a non-violent offender, you don't deserve to go to prison. You should not be incarcerated. If you committed victimless crime, you should not be incarcerated. Especially if this is an isolated event. Especially, okay, maybe let's say, oh, well, people who commit fraud or embezzlement, of course they should go to prison. They did a bad thing, Okay, they did a bad thing. We can agree to that. But if this person, has done this repeatedly and it's predatory, I think when a person does something, even a victimless or nonviolent thing, repetitively, over and over and over again, becomes a pathological situation, then yes, I think a grown up timeout, some form of incarceration, is appropriate to deter the behavior. But, and there's a but, knowing the conditions within our prison system, it would take some real extreme habitual behavior for me to even feel that would even justify incarceration, because I understand the conditions of inmates in America. I understand, medically, psychologically, dietary. I understand the hell, for lack of a better term, that a person will have to endure. And I think it takes some pretty bad stuff to justify a person being subjected to that for a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And in this country, there were people incarcerated with me, white collar, nonviolent, victimless crime, first time offenders, that were doing 5 years, 10 years, which again, understanding the actual environment that these people are placed in, the actual circumstances that they have to undergo, for money laundering or embezzling, is insane to me. Or even for selling drugs. People go, oh, well, drugs kill people. Drugs kill people who take drugs. And I think personal accountability would be a step in the right direction culturally in our society as well. I'm not encouraging embezzlement. I'm not encouraging drug dealing. But what I am saying is selling unregulated goods. And mind you, drug dealers, they're not pharmacists. These aren't people generally with a high level of education. Most barely, if even, have GEDs or diplomas. They certainly don't go buy this quantity of drugs and then go, oh, let me get a chemical breakdown of the percentages of everything that's in it to ensure that I am producing a safe product, or reasonably safe product. That's just not reality. And drug addicts are fully aware of this, just like everybody is. So if you're a person who seeks to do drugs, who chooses that as an adult, and then you go hunt somebody down to buy the drugs off of, and you did God knows what to get the money for the drugs, knowing that this is an unregulated good, it may kill you, whatever, but the high is more important in that moment for you, and that's your personal choice, and you die. I don't think your drug dealer should be faulted for that. I mean, at the end of the day, you, him, me, everybody knew that he was selling unregulated goods. We all knew that he probably doesn't even know what the hell he's actually selling when it comes down to an actual chemical breakdown. And we all knew that you were taking your life potentially in your hands, and you chose to make that decision. So if I was selling knockoff Gucci bags, should I go to prison? I don't think so. Yeah, it's copyright infringement. People argue, oh, it takes money from Gucci, right? The people who buy knockoff Gucci bags aren't the same people that can ever afford real Gucci bags. That's why they buy the knockoffs. So actually, you're not taking money from anybody. You're creating a parallel market of goods for a group that cannot afford the actual market. So the actual market isn't losing money. It's just a parallel market now exists to make money. And and with drug dealers, not every, I'm not going to say every, a lot of drug dealers are selling drugs because they need to make fast money because they have a drug habit. And so if we're going to say, well, drug addicts kind of get a free pass of personal accountability because they have a mental disorder, or they were, incompetent to make sound decisions, note that most drug dealers do drugs. A lot do. So therefore, you're also going to have to extend that pass to their drug dealer, or rescind it altogether. That's a choice people aren't going to make, right? Because they're either on one side or the other, not the either both get the consideration or neither. It's one gets the consideration and not the other. And that's really hypocritical. If we had a prison system that was reasonably humane, if we had a prison system that encouraged family and community ties like every other first world country, if we had a prison system that was provided reasonable human needs like every other first world country, if we had a prison system that focused on rehabilitation like every other first world country, then I would say absolutely. If you are an embezzler, if you're a drug dealer, you get caught, particularly if it's a repeat situation, you deserve to go to prison. But since we don't have those things, and since I know the reality of what we do have, if you're selling unregulated goods, whether it's Gucci bags or heroin, if you are embezzling money, if you're producing counterfeit cash, which is, a pain in everybody's backside, I don't believe that you should be subjected to the American prison system. And I think mandatory minimums are a load of crap. And in the free world, when you and I, as free people, think of 6 months, 2 years, 6 years, our concept of that time is not even closely applicable to what that time actually is. You know, on a linear level, it's the same, but on a psychological and day-to-day level, you know, a year in prison is gonna go by as fast as 10 years in the free world. And that's something that needs to be given consideration as well, because the people who make these sentences and mandatory minimums and sentencing guidelines are people that have never been to prison, and they have no clue and don't care to know that time in prison is very different than time in the free world. Nor do they give one iota of what conditions you're being thrown into by being incarcerated, or your loved ones are being thrown into. And before people say, well, you should have thought about your loved ones before you were criming. A lot of people go to prison by crimes of association. A lot of people go to prison, wrong place, wrong time. There is a thing called malicious prosecution that happens quite often. You may want to look it up. There's a whole organization called the Innocent Project, and their focus is simply getting innocent, non-criming people that are on death row, that are sentenced to die by the justice system, not just prison time, but sentenced to death. Getting those people off death row before they are murdered by the injustice system. What, honey bunny?
How do you spell videos?
Videos. You want to say hi to mommy subscribers? Hi. This is my son Mason, who loves YouTube. Right, Bubs?
Yeah.
Okay, want me to write videos down for you?
Yeah.
Okay. I guarantee you he's on his way downstairs to type this in to watch something on YouTube.
Yeah, Jake's videos.
Jake's videos? Here, let me write Jake's. Jake doesn't say cuss words, does he?
No, he's... Did you know he's my friend that lives up that here where I was playing with the boys at, and I went up there and I played with them.
Okay, that's very nice. Now, you always ask Mommy before you cross that street, though, okay?
Okay.
I love you. Be good. Now, that little angel better never, ever, 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 ever make a choice that will put himself potentially be incarcerated, because my baby don't deserve that kind of hell, no matter what he does, as far as I'm concerned. And neither does my other baby, the 21-year-old. But anyway. So we really have, as a society, we have this knee-jerk reaction when someone has committed a crime that, oh, you know, whatever atrocities happen to them as a result of that, it's their fault because they committed a crime. I don't agree with that. You know, we use the tap water locally to cook and do things, and wash clothes, bathe, etc. And it's well known that the tap water in my area contains C8. There's a whole documentary on Netflix about the C8 in this area. Matter of fact, Parkersburg, the town mentioned, is literally a stone's throw from my front door. We know that we are more likely to have various cancers and thyroid issues, etc., etc. We also know moving is expensive. We also are familiar with the area because we live here. The cost of living is very cheap. You know, the safety level compared to more populated areas is amazing. So we stay. Does that mean that if I get cancer from the C8, that DuPont or whatever major chemical giant happened to be at fault primarily should be given a free pass? Because, I mean, hey, I drank the C8 water, so therefore knew cancer was possible. I deserve to die slowly in front of my children, including the baby you just saw, of cancer? I don't think so. I don't. And if I do get it, I hope to God my family sues the britches off of them, and at least a generation or two of my lineage struggles less because of my loss of life. And it's the same thing, you know, in many ways with the whole criming in prison thing. You know, when I was associated with someone who sold large amounts of narcotics, did I know this is what they did? Sure. Did we discuss it? Absolutely not. You know, that was separate from our relationship, right? Did I know they would probably go to prison at some point? Absolutely. Absolutely. Did I think I would end up in prison, even though I was not buying, selling, or using drugs? Realistically, no. If I would have put my feelings aside and pulled my head out of my butt, knowing that they are a bit reckless and not terribly intelligent, Could I have deduced that some point of prison may come of the situation for me? Probably. Did I deserve to go to prison? No, not at all. Did Miss Pat, who I mentioned in many of my videos, the elderly woman with the alleged Social Security's fraud, did she deserve to be in prison? Absolutely not. I think when the feds do your PSI, if they say that you are no threat to your community, and in fact your presence is beneficial, particularly to more vulnerable members of the community, you should not be going to prison. I think if you have children or elderly relatives who you are the sole primary caregiver for, and you're no threat to your community, you should not go to prison. Ever in this country. Now, if we had a prison system like, let's say, France or Canada, or whatever, then okay, yeah, maybe a 3-month or 6-month prison stay would be justified. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, absolutely not. And I think part of humanizing inmates while incarcerated, pre-sentence, and when they come home, and helping them integrate back into society, because the reality is 5% of our population, of adult population over 40, have been to some degree of prison or jail during their lifetime already. So this is a pretty big slice of our society. And so these people not having excessive mental illness, these people not being depraved, these people not being victimized, ultimately is in our best interest as a community, because whether you like it or not, these people are part of your community. And if you ever happen to have the misfortune of learning firsthand how easy it is for you or someone you love to become one of these people, I think you'll really wish that there was a greater level of understanding and empathy for the whole situation. So, and then too, whenever the news reports, the media is such a puppeting propaganda thing here in our country, but whenever there's a news report, right? Oh, this person did A, B, and C, so they've been arrested. This person allegedly did A, B, and C, they've been arrested. People, without knowing anything about the circumstances, without knowing if there's any accuracy, anything, grab their pitchforks and their torches online and socially in coffee shops and such amongst themselves and start going, they should be in prison. They need to go to prison. And if you said, okay, great, they're going to go to prison, 5 years, 10 years, people will be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, as long as possible. Okay, well, while they're in prison, they're not going to get their proper diabetes medication. They're going to develop high blood pressure, and that's going to knock 15 years off their life when they come out of prison. People are going to say, shouldn't have did the crime. That's not how you treat human beings. That's not how you view human beings, and that's not how you conduct yourself as a human being. We are all part of the human experience. We all want the same things. I don't give a crap. Unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath, which is an incredibly small percentage, a much smaller percentage of our community than the incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. But, the majority of us, we all want the same thing, right? We want to be loved. We want to be supported. We want companionship. We want to feel like we matter. We want purpose. We want to be appreciated, yada, yada. We want stability. We want our basic needs met. And people who've been accused of crimes, people who have admitted to crimes, people who have went to prison, people who have come home from prison, that still applies to all of them. They did not stop being human when they were arrested or when they took a plea deal, which is most often the case, or when they were in prison or when they came home from prison. Now, they're going to be desensitized because of the fact that our culture allows and encourages the dehumanization of them. They're going to be desensitized. They'll probably be bitter. They're going to have some mental health issues or exasperated mental health issues. And the reality is, even though this is common knowledge, the average citizen stands up and claps for this. And it disgusts me. As a human being, it's vile. So, and I understand that, social media and the media and whatnot and movies and culture all encourage this gross indifference and this gross ignorance. But we're in 2024. We have access to the internet. We have access to people, who've lived pretty much anything firsthand. And it's time to do better. As individuals, as a society, and as a country, it is time to do better. Period. So, I want you to ask yourself, who should be in prison? And think of your first knee-jerk answer. Then I want you to really take that answer and really examine it from all angles. Where did it come from? Knowing what you know, does it really make sense? Is it really just? And then once you've really examined that and done the introspect, then I want you to ask yourself again, who should be in prison? And I think you're going to come up with two very different answers. And that's important. That's an important step. That's an important growth that needs to happen individually, as communities, and as a whole, as a country. So that's my thoughts on who should be in prison. Now, if you are a real threat, if you are a predator, if you hurt children, women, animals, communities, especially, if you're a predator, you should be in prison, even though the situation is inhumane and ungodly. It just has to happen. There has to be that severe, extreme deterrent of prison for people like that. And if you're a person who habitually, even if your offenses are nonviolent and victimless, if you are a habitual offender, especially if you have been offered appropriate resources, appropriate education and training, appropriate mental health services, which of course you're not going to be, but let's just pretend you were. If all those things were actually in place the way they should be, and you continue to be a habitual offender, then yeah, some period of incarceration makes sense as a deterrent. And by some period of incarceration, I'm talking 30 days in county jail, 60 days, 90 days in prison, 6 months in prison. I'm not talking 6 years or 60 years, which is what, people are generally comfortable watching happen, and don't bat an eye. And that's not okay either. So with that, I just want to make a video about who should be in prison, and, really just, create a video to kind of stir up some thought and some observation and some realistic perspective on the issue. So with that, please subscribe if you've not already. We're up to like 340 subscribers. The goal is to get to at least 1,000. Feel free to share this video if you'd like. My Cash App and PayPal will be in the description if you'd like to donate to the channel, or my reentry, or my endeavor of putting together a book, or whatever. Also, my email will be in the description if you need to contact me for any reason. And I really hope this video has provoked some thought and some insight for some folks. And I hope that it's something, a small grain of sand on the beach of change. So with that, good day. God bless. And whatever you are going through, it is a slice of your life, and you will get through it because you have to.